Hello to all you lovely garment makers. How are you today? I hope you've had a really lovely day. We have got exactly 13 questions this evening, and 13 is a very lucky number, and I'm going to tell you why it's particularly lucky today. Today, with Peter, my husband, and my dad, who's nearly 91, we went to the Kipling Coats Derby, which is one race that is 4¼ miles long, and it's run along the side of fields, and it does cross over the road, and it is the oldest horse race in England, and it has been going since 1519, so over 500 years. And the first prize winner gets £50 and the second prize winner gets £4 for every horse that enters. It costs £4.25 to enter, so they get 25p profit, and there were 18 entries, so the second prize got £22 more than the first prize, but the first prize winner was number 13, so 13 is a lucky number this evening. So we already know that there are a number of you from different parts of the world who are joining us this evening, so I will pass you over to David so that he can say hello to you and find out where you're from.
Hi everybody, welcome. So Deborah Chancellor from South Dakota, you were the first person on to say hello today. I'm wondering whether you were an hour early because the clocks have changed, but that's fine. Pip Williamson from Nottingham, you've got a question tonight, unknown. Suzanne Batty, Sarah Runnacles, Philippa tells me you're just back from somewhere nice. Deb from Rhode Island, Elizabeth Humphreys from the Stitch Festival. We were there a couple of years ago, I think, so we were just debating whether that was right. It seems a little bit early for that. Denise Carr, you've got a question. In fact, I think you've got the first question tonight. Cilla Moncrief, lots of people saying hello. Nice to talk to everybody, and let's get cracking.
Yes, so I imagine most of you have joined us at least once before, so you know about the prize draw. But just in case you don't, we always have a couple of small gifts to give to lucky winners. So maybe it's going to be number 13, David, the number that gets drawn out. You don't need to do anything, just need to be a paid up member. And this evening we have one of these great little bobbin donut, so you can store your bobbins in there, and if you don't like it as a bobbin storage, you can always wear it as a large bracelet. And then the second prize, the second winner, this is only a small thing, but these are my most favourite tweezers, which just seem to grip thread perfectly and really help you with unpicking and little jobs where you just need to get in and do a bit of detailed work. So the second prize winner will get those lovely tweezers, and also, actually I haven't actually counted these, they're in a little bag from when I bought them, but those great little clips which are so useful. I mean, quilt makers use them a lot, but they're really useful for garment makers, or if you're making something like, I don't know, a leather, or you're using a mock leather fabric and you don't want to put pins in it, something like that, gripping, holding things together. So two nice little prizes. Now Peter, my dear husband, is somewhere down in the garden. I heard him wheeling a wheelbarrow, so I don't quite know what is going on with him, but he's not here to dig into the bottom of my number bag, so I'm going to be doing that this evening. And you can see I'm doing this looking directly at the camera and not into the bag, not looking at the numbers. No idea. Oh, you're here. You've just missed it. Come and say hello and then pass these over to David. So what were you doing, Peter, with the wheelbarrow?
I can, with some irony, state that I've been sweeping up all the dust that you created over the last week. It's just, you know, I mean, the dust, it gets everywhere, and
just go and bring my head torch. It's just on that little, it's just by that chair. Yeah, so you're sick of us. Sorry, I'm going to pass these over to David. David, can you read? Sorry. You know, you're sick of hearing about it, but we're doing this renovation job, and we talked about it last month, and I'm grinding out badly repointed mortar ready for the builders to repoint. And Peter is absolutely right. There is dust everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Even in the rooms that we haven't been in, there is dust. I was just walking around in the studio in stocking feet this evening, and when I went to get changed, my feet, the soles of my feet have got dust all over them. I vacuumed the outside of my window ledges this morning, the outside of the window ledges, but I am...
Neil's complaining about the dust.
Really?
Yeah, that's why
Okay.
That's the builder.
Peter has brought me this amazing head torch, which I am using to see into really dark areas, and it is absolutely fantastic. So that is my best friend at the moment. But anyway, yeah, the dust is something else. Did you succeed, Peter?
I got rid of quite a lot of it, yeah.
Anyway, we should get on to our first question, and hopefully help you achieve a fantastic result. So, first question, please, David.
Okay, so as I said, the first question is from Denise Carr. And we've got a picture that goes with this, so hopefully that works. There we are, there's Denise's picture. Hello, please see my pics. I've made a toile which I had to let out, so I think in the bottom part of the pattern I will have to go up another size. But that means grading from size 14 to size 20. Is this possible? Also, I'm doing the longer sleeves, which restricts my movement. I can only raise my arms to just below shoulder height. Do you think it's the design? And that's from Denise Carr.
Well, Denise, it's a gorgeous dress, and you're very kind to say sorry it's such a long message. It's actually only 4 lines long. Sometimes we get pages, don't we? It's a really short message, isn't it? So you absolutely don't need to worry about that. So a beautiful design there, and I imagine it is for some special occasion, but you're not letting on and telling us what that is. So if you are, Denise is on this evening, isn't she? Yeah. Denise, let us know what the occasion is. So you say that you are going to grade up the lower part of the dress another size, and that means grading from a size 14 to a size 20. So I'm a little confused by that, because grading up another size would be a size 14 to a size 16, 14, 16, 18, 20. So what I wonder is if you are a UK ready to wear. Yeah.
For the 12.
You think? Well, just let me perhaps you might explain that to us, Denise. But what I wonder is if you are a ready-to-wear size 14, but remember that a garment pattern is always 2 sizes bigger. So if you buy a size 14 dress in the shop, you need a size 18 pattern. So it isn't that you've suddenly grown 2 sizes. It's just a different measuring system. Okay. So there is a little bit of confusion on my part there, which you might be able to clarify for me, but you do whatever is right. I mean, don't worry about the numbers. The numbers don't really mean anything. It's whether the dress fits you or not. So
it says it's for a cruise.
Oh, a cruise. Oh, I wonder where she's cruising to. Goodness. Well, let me say, you will definitely be on the captain's table wearing this dress for sure. Now then, the reason that you are not lifting your arms with it's the short sleeved version, which is the longest sleeved version of the dress, is that the armhole is too low and the armhole needs lifting. And imagine if you try your toile on, that it is that the armhole is coming too low and it is stopping you from moving. Now we have got alterations of how to lift the armhole, and I forget which class it is, but if you go to the index you will find that. However, I do have another little idea for you. So if we could, David, just go back to the photo with the actual envelope. So on the left hand side there is the dress. Now it's a little hard to see because it's a fairly small diagram, but the dress that the model is wearing and the version D has a kind of capped sleeve, so it's got an armhole cut away with a little cap sleeve on the top. Now that may be not what Denise wants, because she may want to conceal the upper part of her arm, but I did have an idea about movement and what you could do. I mean, I don't know what your fabric is or anything like that, but just a thought was that you could have that higher little cap sleeve and you could sew a fluted, a kind of very fluid, soft crepey flute to the bottom of the armhole. Have that lovely soft fluted that just took the actual design lower, added another dimension and gave you the movement that you want. So that was just an idea, but basically you do need to lift the armhole. You do need to just check out which of the classes that alteration is in. It is in there. Just can't offhand think which one it is.
Chronicles thinks it's the shirt class.
The shirt class. Thank you very much, Sarah. So if anybody else would like to clarify on that, that would be very gratefully received. So we want to know all about the cruise. We want photos when you get back. We want to know how many times you sat at the captain's table. All the juicy details.
Okay, so I can tell you, if for those of you that haven't got the comments, she's going to Norway, Iceland and Greenland. In terms of the grading, she says the top is 14 and the bottom is currently 16 to 18, but it's tight, so that's what she's talking about.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So me again. Next question. Okay. So the next question is from Joanne Tissington, and Joanne says, "Hi Philippa. When I'm shopping for patterns and fabrics, I often get anxious about what would look good on me. I wondered if it would be possible for you to address information on the many styles that would flatter different shapes, ages and figures. What should we look for with a variety of shapes out there, or what should we avoid when choosing patterns or fabrics?" Very good question, Joanne. I'm not sure we've dealt with that in the live. Philippa, what do you think?
What I think is that is the most enormous question in terms of the answer. Okay, so particularly with Vogue patterns, what's really useful on Vogue patterns is that they have a little symbol on the back for the different body types that particular pattern is suitable for. So you might see a triangle, which is just a solid triangle. That's for people who are very slim, at the lower part, slim legs, not big hips, but have got quite broad shoulders. You might see the more traditional hourglass shape, so for people who definitely have a waist and have that kind of silhouette. You might see a rectangle, which is people who are quite straight up and down, got fairly boyish type of figure. So Vogue patterns are very useful from that point of view, but I really think it's a hugely wide question, and you only need to think about garments in your wardrobe to know what you actually gravitate towards when you go shopping. So for me, I am not very tall, okay, and I do have a defined waist, and so for me, very short jackets look much better than longer jackets. Jackets that fit or stop at the waist, or even above shorter bolero type jackets, or jackets that are fitted into the waist and not straight down, really emphasize that kind of good feature that I have. And also I'm quite a curvy shape, so an A-line skirt, an A-line dress, wider trousers really look good on me. I don't look good in very slim kind of cigarette type trousers, but if you've got, you know, slim hips and a small bottom and not very kind of generous thighs, that kind of thing, then those kinds of trousers fit you. So look to your wardrobe, look at what you've bought that you think, yeah, that really works for me, I look really good in that kind of silhouette. And then in terms of fabric, I think it varies hugely depending on, you know, the look that you are trying to create. So, you know, you could be making a winter coat and it could be a woolen coat, and it could be a very structured kind of almost felted type wool that would really hold its silhouette quite rigidly, or it could be a very soft boiled wool and knitted wool, something like that, that is much more drapey, and that goes for cottons as well, and silks. You know, you can have very, very fine lightweight silks or silk like fabrics that are very fluid, don't add dimension to you, but if you get a very thick rigid fabric, it's going to kind of add the visual kind of look that there's more of you than there perhaps might be. I would say that quite often people tend to think that if they have perhaps gained weight as they've got older and they're not the shape they were when they were much younger, that they tend to go for very loose clothes in an idea that it might kind of cover things up. But sometimes something fitted, a little bit more structured with a little bit more kind of tailored look to it, can really enhance you. So don't shy away from those. And I think a really good thing to do is to go into a shop and take a number of things that you wouldn't perhaps normally try and go into the changing rooms and just try them on and see what happens. You know, if you want to spend money on it, you can employ these stylists to help you out with that. I know right back at the beginning when we did the shift dress class, and shift dress not something that I normally would wear, and when I made the little shift dress and kind of tried it on, I was really pleasantly surprised, A, how good it looked, and B, how comfortable it was. And so that is a style that even I, with all the sewing experience I've got in garment making, hadn't really thought about before, and has become something that I would definitely choose to use. So I do think the answers are already there in your wardrobe, and if you do go shopping, try on lots of things that you don't normally try on. It'll really help you. And I would just say be brave and go for it, and choose colour and choose print so that you don't become invisible. I can't tell you how often I am complimented on how bright I am looking, because most people wear dark, somber colours, and I try very hard not to. It makes a difference. You don't become an invisible older lady. Fingers crossed. Thank you, David.
Okay, I think it's unlikely you're going to become an invisible older lady.
Well, you never know.
But you never know. Okay, so I've just been looking at the index. We were just talking about the alteration to the sleeve, and if you go onto Dressmaking with Philippa, there is a link at the top which says index, and it tells you which adjustments are in which classes. The blouse class has an adjustment to increase the armhole circumference, and the day dress class has a pattern alteration to lift the armhole. So I think both of them, both of those
The day
can be
dress,
helpful.
particularly in this instance.
So the day dress will be the one to look for on that. But if you want to find out where a modification is, which class it's in, just go on to Dressmaking with Philippa, and it's there in the index. Okay, the next question is from Debbie Bolton, and Debbie says, "Dear Philippa, I took a class yesterday from someone who you may have crossed paths with in your career, Julia MacLeod, who worked in the British textile industry in Yorkshire and Scotland. She also worked in New York, as you did, but in the men's tailoring industry. The class was about learning to quilt using silk from old clothing or neckties. Just gorgeous results. It was a wonderful class, and for once a class that I will finish the project I started. My question is, have you ever tried soaking a length of silk or chiffon for maybe making a blouse in diluted gelatin? Hang dry and no crunching or twisting it. Cut and sew with ease, and then rinse and hang dry your garment." She mentioned this as she was talking about different lightweight fabrics and how to make them easier to work with. I thought that was really clever. So what might your take be on that? Thank you, Philippa. And that's Debbie from Oregon.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were taking a class with a British teacher, okay, because you said necktie and not ties. Americans say necktie rather than tie. So that explains a lot. She presumably was teaching in the States. Now then, not to answer your question initially, I will answer it, but I have here, now then, I
remember these arrived.
I have 4 unpicked boxes like this, and I can't tell you how many ties, silk ties are in there, an awful lot. I think there are 27 actually in each box, okay. I've got 4 boxes like that, and then I have a whole box here of unpicked ties that have been completely unpicked and pressed and are ready for some kind of project. So I'm on the same page regarding the ties. Yeah, Peter very kindly bought those for me, a very inexpensive auction purchase. Now then, I've just unpicked a little bit of one of these ties, or neckties if you're in the States, and it has it is silk, and it has a plain little silk on the inside for a little facing bit, but on the inside of it it has two layers of structure, which both look very, certainly one of them is definitely all cotton. The other looks like a brushed cotton. One of them is very, very substantial, and the other one is softer. I'm not quite sure why it needs two, but anyway, what those are doing is they are giving the tie structure, because the silk fabric is too thin on its own to do the job of looking like a smart tie and lasting over many wears. So that's kind of part of the answer, really, is that often I do think that a very fine fabric isn't really what I would choose to use. If it is very thin and very fluid and you are going to need to stabilize it in order to sew it, it's probably going to look a bit kind of raggy and washed out in wear, and certainly on washing and subsequent kind of ironings. I know much earlier on in kind of my sewing career, I can remember being a student and making this silk blouse. It was in the 1980s. It had a big high neck that you tied into a bow, and it was pleated, and it had full sleeves, and I made it in this sort of check, and it was a very attractive fabric in terms of its check, but it was really, really thin. It was such a devil to iron. It was all gathered at the sleeve, and getting the iron in all this very, very creased fabric after it had been washed was just a nightmare. So I actually think that I tend to steer away from that type of fabric. The most fluid fabric that I've used in any of the classes was for the gowns and wraps, where I used a silk, but even that wasn't that kind of that thin, really. I just think you need to think really carefully about how the fabric is going to perform in wear. And I know myself, if it's so difficult to launder and iron, you're just not going to do it. It's going to sit in the bottom of the ironing basket. However, two things to say. There is a product which is called Teriel Magic, and it is a spray that will stiffen fabric, so it almost gives it a kind of paper-like finish, and then you can work with your fabric. It's much more rigid, and then you can wash it away afterwards and it won't leave any residue. So that's very similar to the diluted gelatin. I'm not sure what this is actually made out of. It doesn't actually say. So there are various products that you can try, but I think there are other things. And if you visit the gowns and wraps class, I very carefully explain how I go about cutting out very fluid fabrics, and I do it singly. But also think about things like tearaway stabilizer for sewing very fine seams, because they give structure of the work as it goes through the sewing machine. So tearaway stabilizer is a very useful product, not just for seams but also for supporting buttonholes and things like that. But for your garment making, make careful choices, and scrunch the fabric, hold it up to the light, see how thin it is, and so on. Because if it's really, really thin, I think you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing, really. So that is my take on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Hazel Kimball. It's not really a question. She wanted to share some photos of the velvet dresses that she recently made following a question to Philippa in last October's question time. The cotton velvet was certainly a challenge to work with, and Philippa's advice was invaluable. In the end, there was enough velvet to make my daughter a dress as well, and we've got a picture for this one. So there they all are.
Which one's the daughter and which one's the mum? I can't tell the difference.
I made toiles for all three dresses, a thing I have never done before. The fabric frayed a lot, so I had to neaten every raw edge before starting. I learnt an awful lot about sewing with velvet and about my sewing machine. Not that many years ago I would have given up fairly early on, but with Philippa's help and encouragement I was determined to make a success of this project, and I was more than satisfied with the results, as was my daughter and granddaughters. Thank you. Well, that looks amazing.
Oh, yeah, they're absolutely fantastic. You've done such a good job with them. You really have. I mean, Just the adult dress, just how beautifully it sits on the neckline at the front and at the back. You've got a fantastic fit over your shoulders. Your sleeves look gorgeous. Your hem doesn't look lumpy. You haven't got any pocket seams. They look incredibly professional. So I am delighted for you that you have had such great success and that you had the confidence and the know-how to really persevere with it. So I think you really have excelled yourself there, and no wonder everybody's absolutely delighted with those dresses. So there's going to be no stopping you, is there? Anytime somebody wants something made out of velvet, you say, oh, I can do that, no problem. Well done.
Well done, Hazel. Very, very impressive. Okay, so the next question is from Rachel Gilbert in sunny Cotswolds in the UK, and Rachel says, hi Philippa and David, my question is about a bias cut dress, and we do have this, but I haven't teed this one up. I'm recreating an existing dress cut on the bias but with 8 godets, and I didn't know what godets were. Philippa will have to explain that to me and possibly to other people later on. 8 godets around the bottom cut on the fold, so not on the bias. I've read about the importance of letting a bias dress hang before deciding the hem length. Should I sew in the godets before or after hanging? And I will find you the picture right now.
So before we started, David just asked me how you pronounce that, and said, is it godet? And I said, yes, it's godet. And then he unfortunately forgot. So for those of you not quite sure, it is a godet, not a godet. And a godet is, generally it goes around the hem, or they go around the hem. It's rare that you would put one in, but you might put one in at the centre back. But it is a slit, and into a slit is inserted a triangular piece of fabric. So it adds flair and movement and drama to an item. So,
Can you see the photo?
thank you. Yes, please. Thank you. So, Rachel, have you made a pattern from this particular dress? I mean, if you've taken a pattern from it, I am really impressed. So what Rachel says is that the dress is cut on the bias, so on the 45-degree angle. So instead of the straight grain running down the centre front and centre back of the body, there is a 45-degree angle. But the godet, so the triangular pieces that go in, the middle of the godet is on the straight grain. But what that means is that the 2 seams, the long seams of the godet that get stitched into the actual lower edge of the dress, there will be some kind of a bias line on those edges there. So it's quite advanced sewing, but with, you should be no problem with it whatsoever. I absolutely would sew the godets into the dress, and I would get the dress all done and finished with the exception of the hem, and then I would hang it up. Now, if you have got a dress form or a mannequin, it is better to leave it on the dress form or the mannequin, but if you haven't, a nice padded coat hanger will do the job. Now, when I worked in industry, they always used to say 24 hours, but the longer you can leave it, the better, really. So if you could leave it a week or so, something like that, that would be really useful to you, because it will drop differently. However, once you have got you've let the dress hang for a while, my suggestion is that you get somebody else to do the hem for you. So I would put the dress on, with your good underwear, the right bra, all of that stuff, and I would stand on a table and I would get them to measure up from the floor. I mean, wearing the shoes or a pair of shoes that you might wear with the dress, and get them to measure up with a ruler or a tape measure, and put pins in, plenty of pins in at intervals. What you will find is, because it's all quite fluid, it's quite a kind of movable feast in that sense, is that when you take the dress off and you see the line of pins, they might tend to be a little bit up and down, but you should be able to get a fairly good line. Now, if it's a really important dress and it's really expensive fabric, what I would tend to do is you would have your line of pins. I would baste a line of tacking, a line of basting along that, so you know where you're actually going to turn up the dress. And it a little bit depends on the type of hem you are going to have, whether you're going to have a really narrow hem, something like that. But I'd be quite tempted to just cut away the excess, leaving yourself plenty, and just try it on so that it's level. It may not be the exact length that you want, but it's level. Just check it before you actually turn it up, because it may need 1 or 2 little tweaks. But yeah, definitely put the godets in, definitely leave it to hang for several days if you can, and then you will do your best job.
Okay, waiting for godet. Right.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but we didn't do question 3. Was there a reason for that?
Did we skip it?
We did. It was just a tiny question, but we ought to just add that in.
Okay, that was because it's a tiny question and I went straight past it. Okay, no, that wasn't on purpose. So Donna McCallion, I apologise, I skipped past your question. Donna says, "Hi David and Philippa, can you direct me to a fairly simple toddler girls summertime dress pattern? I bought a pattern from Etsy, but it's too complicated." And that's from Donna McCallion.
So Donna, we didn't do any children's wear, did we, in the classes? And I don't have any grandchildren or really little nieces or anything like that. So I don't, and it's going to be a long time waiting. So my suggestion to all of our lovely viewers is that if anybody has got grandchildren and has made some little summer dresses that have been really successful, if you could share that information, that would be very helpful, because it's not a road that I have gone down yet. So thank you, David.
There's actually a question coming up. I don't know whether it's an easy one to do or not. Philippa will be able to tell, but there's a question later on. So question 12 has a question about a little dress, so that might help you out. We'll see. Okay, the next question that we have is from Antari. Hi Antari. And Antari says it's not a garment question, but more on fabric and fibre. She says, "I've been suffering with bad hip pain for a few months, and I'm thinking of making a bolster Indonesian style, as the ones here in the UK are either too big, too small, and just not comfortable to use. Traditionally in the past they were stuffed with kapok, but now I assume due to cost microfiber is more popular." And we've got a picture of what she's talking about here. She says this isn't her picture, but this is what she's talking about. I'm not a fan of, she says, "I'm not a fan of microfiber. My pillows are stuffed with down." So coming to the questions, being in the UK, what are your thoughts, Philippa, on using kapok, down, or even wool as fillings, or could you suggest something else? And what fabric or material might she use to keep them in? Many thanks as usual, and that's from Antari.
And Antari, we haven't had a question from you for a little while, so it's really nice to hear from you.
Do we?
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry that you're struggling with hip pain. And yeah, a little bolster might be just the thing that you need to really help supporting you when you're sleeping or when you're in a particular position seated, something like that. So yeah, definitely want to try and help you with that. Now, kapok, it is something that was used, and we used to use it. I know when I was at school and doing my needlework lessons at school, kapok was a kind of cotton wool type product that was used to stuff soft toys, that kind of thing. And it's not a European product. I can't now remember where it grows, but it's actually a fibre from a seed pod from a tree, and the tree doesn't fruit every year or doesn't flower every year, but when it does, it can have up to 400 fruits. And when the seed pod opens, it's a bit like a cotton ball in that sense, that these fibres are released, and they are really good for lots of purposes, but they used to be used for stuffing toys. So it's hypoallergenic, that kind of thing, very natural. And I did just kind of look to see whether it was available for sale, because it's not something that I have seen or used for a very long time. It is out there, but it is only sold in relatively small quantities and it's quite expensive. So I think, for example, you could get about 100 grams. Well, that's only 3.5 ounces for kind of £5-6. So if you're going to want and need enough to do a fairly substantial bolster type of pillow cushion, that's going to cost you a lot of money. And I agree with you that microfiber is not ideal in many ways, is it? It's not environmentally friendly, it's not biodegradable, that kind of thing. So I personally would tend to use wool, a wool wadding, and I think that probably your most economical way of doing that is to do a bit of research online, and these companies and UK companies that do wool duvets and wool pillows, that kind of thing, it might be as cheap to buy a wool pillow as it is to buy wool stuffing. It might even be cheaper. So I would certainly look into that, and I would use wool, and you'll be able to pack it really hard down so that you can get the kind of support that you want. And it isn't like feathers in that it's going to kind of migrate and poke its way through an open weave, but I might use something like a cotton poplin, so art gallery fabrics, that kind of thing, and use that as your actual inner. But why not make it really beautiful and make a second fabric one? So you'd have your cotton poplin on the inside, which would contain all of your stuffing, and then you could have a nice outer fabric with a zipper, so it would be much prettier, and you'd be able to take that off to wash it as well. So and that can be absolutely anything. If you've got your lovely your cotton poplin, really tightly woven fabric for the actual making of the pillow. So let us know what you do, because other people might want to tap into that information to do similar.
Thank you, Antari. Hopefully there's some information there that will be useful to you. Jane Petley-Jones has just joined us, and I know you've got a question coming up, Jane, so you're not too late for your question. Okay, the next question is from Anne and Misty. And Anne and Misty say, when dressmaking, should I zigzag the edges separately, or do I zigzag together before I sew the seams? What do we think, Philippa?
I think that Anne and Misty, and I wonder how much sewing Misty's doing, probably your best little helper, I would imagine. I'm guessing that Misty is a cat. What do you think, David?
Possibly. I know of ladies called Misty.
Oh, do you?
Yes,
right.
I do.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I don't know any ladies called Misty, but anyway, perhaps you would enlighten us with that. I don't think there's one size fits all. I think it very much depends on what you are doing. So, for example, let's say you're making a cotton summer skirt and it had a centre back zipper in it. The side seams, if it wasn't a very heavy fabric, I might overlock or zigzag those together, but the centre back seam where I needed to put the zipper in, I would do that separately so that I could press the seam open. So I think it very much depends on what you are doing, how heavy duty the fabric is. I think that makes a difference, and I don't think that you need to do the same thing in all of the places. So for example, you might decide that zigzagging or overlocking shoulder seams together, press them towards the back, is too bulky. They might be better if they are pressed open. So just to be guided by common sense really, and do which you think is the most appropriate for the fabric and what else you need to do with that particular scene as you move further through the construction process.
Okay, a couple of comments about the stuffing. Jill Boone says Kapok is used to stuff many zafus or zafus.
We don't know what those are.
Self-conscious about my pronunciation now.
What is this? What's
she
this
says they
zafu?
are meditation cushions.
Okay.
And she also says buckwheat hulls is also another option. And Antari just says thank you for that. Okay, the next question is from Pippa from Nottingham. And Pippa, I think we saw that you had joined. And Pippa says, hello Philippa, I've learned so much from your classes. I've realised how important basting is, but I just can't make my knots like you do. Can you do a slow-mo demonstration, please? I end up with no knot on the end, which is very frustrating. Now, I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to film this as well as we might, but let's give it see what Philippa's got for us.
So I'm going to try and talk you through it. So I'm assuming you are right-handed. I am right-handed, so I'm doing this as a right-hander, but if you are left-handed, you would just reverse everything. So take your piece of thread. How detailed can I make this explanation? Take your piece of thread and have a couple of inches or so, maybe a bit less, 4 centimeters, kind of hanging out like a little tail, okay? Grip that between your thumb and your forefinger. Now take the forefinger of your left hand, so the thread is in your right hand, take the forefinger of your left hand and stick it out. Lick it, okay? That's really important. Lick it so that it's just a little bit damp, and then lay the thread across it. So the bottom of the thread is down, it's extending a little bit beyond the my finger, and I'm going to wrap around, and I've got kind of gone 1.5 times around. So at the what's that bit? My God, I can't think of the word. My
fingertip?
Yeah. So it's double on my fingertip. Okay, so I've wrapped it round, and then I'm taking my thumb and I'm just rolling it towards the end of my nail, and it's twisting, and then I'm just pulling it tight. I've got a really big juicy fat knot there. You want me to do it again?
One more time.
Okay, so about 4 centimeters, 2 inches, something like that. Lay that over the forefinger of your left hand. A little bit is extending down 1 centimeter, half an inch or so. Wrap it, come all the way to the top so that you are holding the thread, and then roll it, and then just pull tight. Best I can do in this situation. I don't know whether I can do it with a piece of string. It might not. Just, I think the licking of the finger, which I didn't do the second time, but I do have very sweaty hands, unfortunately, so I didn't kind of need to re-lick it. So I don't know whether it'll work because this is so thick. There's my tail. I wrap it, roll it. It won't really roll. Nah, good idea, but that didn't work. So that's how I do it.
I was just trying to say, we've done a video of it somewhere.
We have.
And sorry, I'm just trying to switch the sound off Philippa, otherwise we'll get a code.
I mean, sorry, David, apologies.
We're back on you.
What I think, what's a good idea is actually, as I'm doing this, if you've got a thread anywhere near you, as I'm talking, just sit and just keep rolling, chopping and rolling. It becomes sort of second nature to you, really.
Right, sorry. I'm just having a look. I'm sure I think there will be one either on Facebook somewhere or on YouTube, which Philip has done. We did film a short with it, and we did close-ups. It's very hard to do close-ups when we're live, unfortunately. Okay, so the next question is from Charlotte Voigt Kissling, Cheryl Voigt Kissling, and Cheryl says, I'm finally ready to start the Chanel jacket. I'm thinking of using old soft denim jeans for a sample. If it's good, I will continue and I will add braid, etc. Any suggestions on stabilising? So Cheryl is basically asking, what do you think of that as an idea for her jacket?
I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think it gives you lots of opportunities for embellishment. So you could really take it kind of down the jeans line, couldn't you? And you could add all kinds of rivets. I mean, I'm immediately thinking like rows of rivets. And if you are using old jeans, your panels of fabric are going to be relatively narrow, and so you might be putting additional seams in to get the width that you want, and so that will give you another or other places to really think about the design. You know, you don't need to stick just to the number of panels that the pattern gives you. If you need to make them wider, adding seams in, decorative seams, is a really nice way of doing that. The thing about the Chanel jacket is it is known as the cardigan jacket. It's not supposed to be very tailored or structured. You know, it's supposed to be quite soft and loose over the shoulders. The pockets are, if it's got pockets, are often deliberately sewn on to look a little bit saggy and baggy, as if you've kind of had stuff in them over a period of time. So I don't know that I would worry too much about stabilising it, but I think that it's just sort of thinking about it right now, is that I would follow the method that I use in the class, and I would sew the lining to your denim, but instead of trying to make that a kind of a very discreet, invisible structure, I would tend to make it very decorative. So for example, the lining at the back is sewn to the outer fabric, but it's left unstitched at the lower edge and up towards the shoulders in order that you can finish off the other seams. Well, you could do your stitching, but you could sew a line of stitching using a fairly thick thread. You could do 2 or 3 stitches across the bottom, foot space all the way up, and then close. You're making this incredibly long, thin rectangle that replicates a flat fell seam. So I would think very creatively about it, and I would say to you that it is supposed to be relatively softly structured, and I don't think you need to kind of work too hard about trying to stabilize it. It doesn't actually need it.
Okay, some people are saying they've just tried that and it worked, and other people are saying it's still not working for them on the tying the knot. So I think, as with all things, it's a case of keep practicing until it's like when you learn to whistle, isn't it? You can't do it, and you can't do it, and you can't do it, and then suddenly you just start and you're off and running. Okay, the next question is from Paula Shenton. Hi, Paula. Paula says, I'm currently in mid-project, and yes, it's the Chanel style jacket. Finally getting on with it. My question is, what are your thoughts on inserting a sleeve header, as my pattern advises one plus a shoulder pad? She says, I had to Google to find out what it is, and I see it's an extra tailoring technique. The pattern is a modern take on Chanel style, and we've got an image to show you. So here's the pattern and the beginning of Paula's work. The pattern is a modern take on Chanel style, but she hasn't come across this technique before. The fabric is lightweight polyviscous mixed fibre, and she's fused light interfacing for stability, and she's wondering if she needs both a header and a pad, and then she's given us another couple of photographs to look at. So Philippa, we'll come back to you. And you can tell us which, because there's other photos there, which ones you want to see.
I'm very tempted just to sit here and keep doing little knots, which would frustrate some of you, wouldn't it? Okay. Right, okay, so the pattern that you saw there is a really lovely pattern. It is quite structured, isn't it? Yeah. So it's got quite a almost masculine shoulder, in that it's quite a straight out shoulder. It extends a little bit beyond the normal width of the shoulder, and it is fairly tailored. And so the section that, it is Paula's, thank you. Paula is asking about, if you think about a men's tailored jacket, if you were to go to Savile Row and see a men's jacket being manufactured, there are multiple layers of canvas that go into the collar, into the front, across the shoulder, to really support the shape and really help that jacket look good for many, many wears over many years. And that is the piece, it is an additional piece of fabric that is put on the inside of the outer fabric to just give more structure and to hold that. So is it necessary or is it not necessary? It very much depends on you, the look you want, and how firm the fabric is that you've already got. So I don't think that it is something that is wasted with this particular jacket, because it is really going to help to add that structure. I don't know from your pattern what they are suggesting that you use and how it is cut, but I would be tending to use a light to medium, not too tightly woven cotton fabric. I wouldn't be using proper linen tailoring canvas, and I would cut it on the bias so that it isn't too rigid. It's got a bit of flex to it. Your kind of danger with it, and sorry David, could you show the pattern which the picture which shows the actual piece, and I'll keep sort of talking over it. So it's the black and yeah, the top one, thank you. So you can maybe see the piece there. Your danger with it is that it's going to add bulk in the armhole seam. So I would try to trim as much of that away as possible, and I would really try to attach it to the shoulder seam. So that was where it was anchored, so that you were able to trim quite a lot away. So if we go to the middle picture now, please, David, what you can see with the middle picture is that Paula's doing a really nice job there. So what we are seeing on the right hand side is the sleeve has been put in. It hasn't been pressed or trimmed or anything at this stage, but if you particularly look at the shoulder's got a very nice structure to it. It's got a really nice shape to it. There is a little bit of kind of almost puckering on the back armhole there. Now, what I would say, if you could just sort of come back to me, thank you, Dave. It looks great at the front. There is a little bit there. I wouldn't stick too slavishly to matching notches from the shoulder around the back. It might be that that little bit of easing will just go in a little bit better if you don't absolutely match the notches and you take that little bit of easing further down towards the underarm there. So don't stick too slavishly to that. I think that sleeves can be quite problematic. You know, you could make the same jacket in so many different fabrics, and in a softer fabric the sleeve would go in really easily, and then in a crisper fabric you might find that you've got too much fabric. You might want to steam it out or ease it slightly differently. So I think in this case it is probably a good addition, but I just wanted to show you something else, which was a Harris tweed jacket that I made for my son Dan a number of years ago, and I did actually make the shoulder pads and a similar thing for that jacket, and I made the shoulder pads out of just quilting 100% cotton wadding or batting, and then you can see that there are two strip pieces there which I also manufactured, and they go sort of, they cover the seam area really, so that the shoulder kind of extends, the sleeve extends a little bit further. If we could go to the final picture of that jacket, please, you can see that the shoulder has looks really lovely. It's not over structured. It's a sporty jacket. It's not super tailored. It's quite a thick tweedy, as I say, Harris tweed fabric, but that little roll piece really helps to give a really nice structure. So that is another way of coming up with a kind of similar, adding to the quality of the finish of the sleeve going into the sleeve head. So again, it's one of those things that some fabrics, some patterns, it's really worthwhile and you should do it, and others, it's not the look that you're trying to create. It's going to make it too structured. But in this case, I think it is worth it.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered, Philippa, did that wall need repointing, do you think?
That is the wall that is in the process of being repointing. Yes, well spotted there, David.
I thought it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just a little aside. Okay, the next question is Jane Petley Jones, and Jane, we know you're on watching, so that's good. And she says, I need to tee up Jane's picture here. There we go. So Jane says, I have been working on a little dress for my granddaughter, and it looks like a very sweet little dress. The fabric I chose is very pretty, which is why I bought it. However, when I started cutting, I realised that it's made of 2 layers of muslin, only held together by the occasional link thread. The cutting out has been tricky as the fabric moves about and the pins just drop out when I move it. The tension on the machine is hard to work out too, as there isn't much for the thread to grip. I'm working away at it, but any tips on this type of fabric would be greatly appreciated. And that's from Jane.
Yeah, and we had a question on this type of fabric 2 or 3 months ago, maybe a little bit more, and I can't actually remember who made it, but it was a pale blue dress that had been made. It's obviously something that is quite popular at the moment. Just, you know, it's not a fabric that I've ever really worked with particularly, but the fact that we've had 2 questions on it in a relatively short period of time. I mean, there's quite a lot of it in the shops. And on the, if we could just go back to the pictures there, David, on the left hand side, that is a really brilliant close-up picture that you've given us there, Jane, and you can see the little connecting threads that hold those two layers together. Thank you, David. So a bit more substantial than just a single kind of cheesecloth muslin type fabric. In the UK we call it cheesecloth, that slightly crinkled look to it. I might be tempted on, say, the bodice part to actually put some little quilting lines through the fabric before you cut it out. So I know you've already kind of gone beyond that, but another time this is something you might think about. You could roughly cut out the little bodice, but a little bit bigger, and you could put some diagonal quilting lines across it, cross hatching, fairly, you know, inch and a half, something like that. You could actually join your pattern at the shoulder seams, fold it out so that you didn't have the shoulder seams. You could do that all in one. That would stabilize that area where it's quite important that it doesn't kind of move about so much. But the little gathered skirt and frill, I wouldn't worry too much about it in those areas. If you've got a serger, an overlocker, you probably might find that joining the side seams is easier to do with your serger, your overlocker, than with a regular straight stitch. But we chatted earlier about tearaway stabilizer. That might be a case in point where it's quite helpful, because it's going to give the stitch somewhere to kind of grip onto it in that case, because it is quite an open weave, isn't it? And I would play a little bit with your stitch length as well, and just see, because a slightly longer stitch length than normal might be advantageous to you in this case. And then I think, you know, if you have got an overlocker or a serger, the little frill on the bottom and on the top of the armhole, you could just overlock the raw edge for the hem and just turn back a scant half an inch or so, and then stitch, you know, a good quarter of an inch from the folded edge to finish that off, and that would do the job, because you don't want to be spending hours with really extensive kind of sewing techniques on a little dress that you know, your granddaughter is it granddaughter, apologies if I've got that wrong, yeah, she's going to grow, isn't she, and she's not going to be wearing it for the next 5 years. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of help, but I also wouldn't worry too much about it. It's quite a loose style, and if it's a little bit off, it's just not going to notice. She's going to look beautiful in it, whatever.
Perfect, thank you, Philippa. Okay, so the final question is from Judith, and Judith says, I'm making a quilted jacket. Second one, different pattern. I'm struggling with the binding on the side seams because there is a shape to it. Photos attached, and we've got the photos here. And she says, I can manage the first line of sewing to attach the binding, but then I'm struggling with bulk when I fold it over the edge to secure it on the inside of the jacket. I'm sure there's an easier way, but I've now mashed my brain and I can't see it. If you get a chance to have a look at this, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks for all your tutorials. And that's from Judith. What do we think?
Yeah, I'm interested in that because you've got a single strip of fabric there. You haven't folded it in half. You haven't got a double folded bias, so it isn't super thick, is it? I think it is bias. I'm trying to just discern whether you have cut it on the bias or whether you've cut it on the straight grain. Anything where you need to get round a curve, a curvy shape that's not just straight lines, you do need to cut your bias, or have you do need to cut your binding on the bias, not on the straight grain. But I think that you have done that. So I am a little bit unsure why that is problematic to you. I think that where you are stitching round the curves, be very careful not to kind of pull on the binding and stretch it. Just try and if anything, slightly ease it as you sew it on, so that you've got that little bit of extra fabric there. I have to say, I've tried to look. I think that your jacket isn't reversible. I can't actually tell how the side seams are joined together and what the finish on that is. Not quite sure on that, but I might in that case have bound the two front edges separately and the back separately, and then finished off the final bit of the side seam at the bottom, and then you haven't got to try and do some kind of little fiddly mitre thing where the little section at the side seam goes up into that shaped V. It makes the finishing much easier. So I wonder if it is particularly that is causing you issues, and maybe you can just unpick that bottom bit and just finish those off separately and close it up. If you do that and you end up with some kind of raw edges and something that is a little bit messy on the inside, don't worry about that. Use that as an opportunity to add another little element. So what I would do is I would take your binding fabric or even another contrasting fabric, and I would cut a little square, and I would press in the edges, and I would either machine or hand stitch that over the messy bit on the inside, and then you've got that little flash of colour. You know, you've got a little red dot there, you could choose a little bit of red, maybe you could put a little red hanging loop on the inside neck, something like that, so that you just increase that little element, and it's that little extra splash of something that gives a bit more interest, and it solves a problem that you might not like the look of. So with the information that I've got, hopefully that is of help to you. I'm not 100% clear that I have answered what you want, but hopefully I have.
Right, that's all the questions.
Okay, so perfectly timed, ladies. How did you do it? So Peter, who are our lucky winners? He slowly wanders in.
What's the prize? A tie?
A tie? No,
Yeah.
we were just chatting about ties.
All right, okay.
Would you like a tie? I have one or two spare.
We're
Do you want a
keen to
tie,
get rid-
David?
We're keen to get rid of those, yeah. The lucky winners are Juliet Nicholson and Kate Richards.
Wow, so thank you very much. So Juliet and Kate, David will get in touch with you and find your postal addresses, and then your gifts will be parcelled up and sent off to you. And so I do hope that you open those emails and answer so that we can send you your gifts. So have we got any other news, anything else to share? Well, we will be back on Tuesday with our quilt makers for Quilters Question Time. So if you are a member of Quilters Question Time, you've got a question, there is still time to get questions in, isn't there, David?
Absolutely,
yeah. So you've got plenty of time to do that. Here in the UK, the weekend is supposed to be nice and sunny, so I will be outside creating dust. Peter will be outside sweeping it up. What will you be doing, David?
I'll be mowing the lawn. Probably.
Mowing the lawn? Have you mown the lawn yet?
Not yet.
No, so first mow of the year then, yeah. Yeah, I can definitely tell our grass is starting to grow, so yes, yeah. Okay, so I hope you have a super weekend and that you get lots of sewing done, lots of creative things over the next few weeks. We will be back with you towards the end of April when the longer days will definitely be with us. So you've got to get that sewing in now, because I know your gardens, a lot of your gardens are going to be calling you over the summer months. So keep stitching.
Spring equinox.
Today, is it the 21st today? I don't even know what day it is. What day is it? It's usually the 21st. 20th, okay. Spring equinox, if it's not today, then it is very soon. So thank you for all your lovely questions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all of your input and all of the information you share with one another. We look forward to chatting to you again in a few weeks. So from all of us here, Peter.
Bye-bye.
And from David.
Bye-bye.
And from me. Bye for now. See you soon. Take care, everyone.